it possible for zombies to exist in real life? We will discuss every kind of zombie, from classic films to video games. We will not go into detail about The Last of Us, as we have a complete video dedicated to that specific type of zombie. So let's begin by discussing the most traditional zombies, referring to those that are like living dead. You know, those that have been decaying for a while and suddenly come back to life. And once they come back to life, they chase you to eat you, bite you, or something like that. Honestly, I'm not sure what these zombies aim to do in life, but well. However, the point is that they come back to life after being dead for a long time, and they can walk and run and everything. Okay, is this possible in real life? No, but let's see why. We will discuss later on the video other types of zombies that could exist, for example, those caused by rabies or bacteria. But why can't these ones exist? I mean, the ones that come back to life. Well, when a person loses their life, they stop breathing and their hearts stop beating and sending oxygen and nutrients to their different body tissues, including, of course, the brain. The brain, after just a few minutes of not receiving oxygen, loses its functions. I remind you that the brain is responsible for many things, including processing information. Everything we perceive, sight, sound, smell, is processed in the brain. Therefore, if we have a person who has lost their life and has been like that for a while, and their brain has gone many hours or even days or years without oxygen, then they won't be able to process anything. They won't be able to see, hear, or smell anything. Therefore, a zombie cannot perceive you in any way. I mean, a zombie that has been brought back to life. Another very important function of the brain is that it regulates movement. The brain sends electrochemical signals to your muscles so that they can contract, allowing you to move. If the brain is not functional because it lacks oxygen, nutrients, etc., those signals cannot leave the brain and reach your muscles. Still, on certain occasions, your muscles can contract without the brain's intervention, as it happens with certain reflexes. The reflex of when you are burning, for example, it doesn't have to go up to the brain to be processed. It's simply automatic. But coordinated movement is processed in the brain. Now, if the movement of zombies were activated only by reflexes, their movements would be very disorganized and they wouldn't even be able to stand, let alone chase you. Now, let's move on to the next part, which is muscle. When you move, your muscles are contracting. In order for this to happen, the cells in your muscles also contract. I will keep it simple, but it's way more complex in real life. For your muscles to contract, calcium must enter to your muscles. Okay, also other things must enter and there's another exchange, but calcium is the most important for this mechanism. Now that your muscle is contracted, for it to relax again, calcium must leave your muscles. And for this, it requires energy. Energy here at a cellular level is in a form called ATP. ATP is responsible for many energy-related processes in cells, not only for relaxing muscles. Okay, when calcium enters a muscle cell, it causes contraction, but energy is required to expel the calcium for relaxation. What happens to a body that is no longer alive? Well, when calcium enters the cell, they contract, but then they lack the energy to remove the calcium and relax the muscles. Actually, this is what causes rigor mortis. You know, when people are all rigid like this, a few hours after they have passed away. This is because your body requires specific elements, such as oxygen and glucose, to generate energy in ATP form. And well, these cells are not receiving it because of what we mentioned before. They are not receiving oxygen because the person is not breathing, the heart is not beating, and this is true for all of your body processes. And yeah, just a quick note, there are certain options to produce ATP without oxygen, but it creates acid, which ends up being more harmful to your cells and causes them to break down quicker. Once rigor mortis has occurred, because of what we just mentioned about calcium entering the cell and then having a hard time to be expelled from the cells, well, the duration of rigor mortis varies depending on the body's location. After days, hours, or weeks, considering the body's surrounding, if calcium had indeed entered the cells, they are unable to remove it. The body ends up relaxing when the cells begin to deteriorate due to the natural decay process. Once the cell's membrane decay, calcium leaves the cell because there's nothing holding it inside. There's no longer a cell per se. And once the cell has gone through the process of decay, degradation, etc., this cell is no longer whole and therefore cannot contract again. So Marie wonders why. How could this be possible that in the movies and the series where zombies appear, if they can't contract and relax their muscles, how is it possible that they can move and chase you and even run? Even worse, I've seen series and movies where they run for days on end without drinking water, without eating anything. I mean, come on, this is 100% impossible. And even more troubling, I've seen series where zombies are nearly skeleton with just a little tiny bit of skin lacking muscle. So how are they moving? With magic? Like the scene of the torso in The Walking Dead. This has always troubled me. I've also seen movies where they cut out the zombie's arm and the arm keeps moving on its own, and I say, how can this be possible? Well, it can't. It cannot be possible. But this is a good thing. You will never have to worry about a revived zombie chasing you. By the way, there are two things that I'm currently observing in the editing process of the video. In The Last of Us, they do care about it. They show clickers eating other animals when they can't find humans. And I think that's a great detail from part of The Last of Us production. Very well done indeed. I mean, otherwise it won't be scientifically possible for a zombie to live for so long without consuming anything. So once again, yeah, you can be assured that no zombie will come back to life to chase you, bite you, eat you, or do whatever that it is that zombies wants to do. Which I still don't fully understand, to be honest. However, there are things that are actually possible zombie-wise, and this involves certain parasites, viruses, bacteria, etc. Okay, so moving on. What kinds of zombie could exist in reality? As we saw in the previous part, traditional zombies, those who lose their lives and come back, could not exist. However, those caused by viruses, bacteria, etc. could indeed exist to some degree at least. So which ones and how will they work? I will now explain everything to you. Regarding the Opiocordyceps fungus, we have a whole video explaining this, and you can go and look at that video clicking here if you want. So we will focus on other franchises. Let's now discuss the zombies in World War Z and 28 Days Later. In both films, the zombie apocalypse is caused by a virus, and in both films, contact with the virus occurs directly and immediately. Basically, they bite you and you turn into a zombie right away. You just have a few seconds before the transformation. This could not happen in real life because a virus, no matter how quick, doesn't act in seconds. When a virus invades your body, any virus at all, it doesn't matter which one, it will take them hours or even days or years to attach to your cells and insert its genetic material so that the material can use your cell's mechanism to be multiplied. A virus cannot attach into cells and have them create everything it needs in seconds. Now, in real life, there are various viruses that could lead to effects similar to zombie attacks, with the rabies virus being the most notable. But we will talk about that in a few minutes. Just please have a little bit of patience. Thank you. Still focusing on these movies, if there were an attack like that by zombies related to viruses, it would take several hours or days for an infected person to start showing symptoms and develop all these zombie-like aspects. Therefore, they could be quarantined with enough time to prevent it from spreading like a pandemic or epidemic. Meaning that in real life, if there were some kind of zombie epidemic caused by a virus, we could take precaution measures. Therefore, the virus will not spread like that in seconds, and humanity will not suffer a zombie apocalypse under these specific circumstances. And remember what I was telling you earlier about how zombies in many movies are always running and don't drink water or eat anything? It's the same in these two films. Actually, in the case of 28 Days Later, the zombies are even shown to be constantly spitting some kind of saliva. The dehydration those individuals experience must be astonishing. A human being cannot last more than 2 or 3 days without drinking water, especially if they are constantly exercising, which causes them to lose even more water through sweating and breathing. And if on top of that you're expelling a lot of liquid, it's impossible for someone to keep moving after 2 days like that. The other thing I wanted to mention is the whole universe of I Am Legend, which is based on a book, and as always there are several discrepancies between the book and the movie, but the point is that neither of them are zombies. Actually, they are vampires. And we do have a video about vampires, but I need to translate it. Once it's done, I hope to add the link here, in case you want to watch it once it's uploaded. Because of the zombies there not really being zombies but vampires, we didn't think to include them in this video. But they do have some interesting points, like for example, the movie talks about a kind of vaccine that modified a virus to cure cancer. And this mutated virus got out of control and caused all these problems. This movie situation has a little bit of truth in real life. Right now, this is being used in genetic therapies, and these have been in practice for over 30 years. Yes, indeed, some individuals have died from this method, because to deliver genes to the cell of a body, there are several strategies. Among these, one is taking the shell of a virus, removing its DNA, meaning the virus DNA, and inserting instead the DNA that you want to deliver to the patient's cell inside of the virus shell, because viruses are good at delivering DNA. This method in real life is mostly safe because you can introduce a gene into a cell more easily, and this happens without turning the person into a vampire or something similar. But it is true that has been deadly before on other occasions, because the immune system of the recipient can attack that virus capsule and cause that immunology shock that ends that person's life. But it's not because the person was genetically modified, rather because the body is reacting against the viral envelope used to deliver that gene to the patient's cell. So there won't be a vampire zombie apocalypse apocalypse from these therapies, but they are still dangerous and therefore only applied for certain diseases and with extreme caution. And that's it for this saga. Now, which viruses, bacteria, and parasites could potentially exist to truly create a kind of zombie? This wouldn't be a real zombie, it just would have certain characteristics that we collectively link to zombies thanks to pop culture. Let's begin with the first one, which is the clearest example. It's the rabies virus. This virus is quite particular because it spreads through bites, very similar to the zombie movies. And in fact, I find it a very clever mechanism. This virus concentrates in the saliva of the infected animal and makes it very aggressive. Let me explain how it works. The idea is that this virus makes the animal bite, and through that saliva, it infects another organism. In the skin and the muscle tissue, this rabies virus grows and travels very slow. But once it finds the nervous system, it spreads extremely quickly. Once in the nervous system, it seeks to reach your brain. If the virus gets to your brain, you are doomed. You might still be safe before that, but once it arrives to the brain, you will die in a few days after symptoms start to show. What the rabies virus does is it inflames your brain once it reaches it, which makes you more violent, since in mammals, brain inflammation causes them to become very aggressive, activating the animal's most violent instincts. And this is why some dogs bite, even their owners, when they get infected by rabies. Again, this virus is quite intelligent and incites violence in you to encourage biting other creatures, thus ensuring its spread. Great mechanism. Fortunately, humans normally don't bite when aggressive. Our natural way of attacking, even when more aggressive due to the virus, tends to be through hitting and kicking, but we don't usually attack with our faces. It's true that some rabies patients do bite, but usually that's not what occurs. Therefore, if there happens to be a kind of pandemic of rabies, first, you can treat yourself before the bite reaches your brain. And second, even if your brain gets infected, it's very likely you won't bite anyone. Plus, they can quarantine you, but the virus won't spread further. Regarding the time it takes patients to show symptoms after rabies infection, well, it varies widely. Some individuals have taken 10 years even to manifest symptoms. It depends on where the animal's initial bite is and how long it takes to reach your nervous system. But as I said, it is treatable until it reaches your brain. Once it hits the brain, there's nothing you can do. Once the symptoms started to show up, you have 2 to 10 days to live. Another parasite that can indeed affect humans and also influence our behavior, according to various studies, is toxoplasma. The mechanism of this toxoplasma is also very interesting. It thrives on felines' intestines, like my cheeky Marie. Therefore, they try to infect felines' prey so that the felines will eat them, and then the toxoplasma can continue reproducing in their intestines. When this parasite infects small mammals that are felines' prey, it changes their behavior, making them fearless to predators. They approach the felines and behave strangely, seeking to be eaten. This practically causes the little animal to self-sabotage, and therefore to be sacrificed and eaten by felines. In this way, the parasite successfully reaches the intestine of the felines.
It also makes the smell of cat urine attractive to mice. Very strange, as they usually fear it, but when infected with toxoplasma, they are drawn to it.
And you could say, okay, this is true for mice, but could it happen also to humans? Well, yeah, kinda. It turns out that humans are primates, and there are certain large felines that primarily feed on primates. For instance, some big cats eat chimpanzees and baboons. Leopards are one such example. Chimpanzees that have been infected by this parasite exhibit behavioral changes, taking more risks and being drawn more to the smell of these big cats, like for example to their urine. This leads them to get closer to their predators so they can be eaten, like it happens with mice and cats, allowing the toxoplasma to thrive in the intestines of leopards. In humans, as I mentioned before, we are primates. Various studies appear to demonstrate that our behavior is affected when we are infected or influenced by toxoplasma. For instance, a greater percentage of individuals involved in car accidents have been infected by this parasite because this parasite seems to affect our reaction time, making us easier prey for the large feline. It also seems that if you have this parasite, you are more likely to develop schizophrenia. Although much more research is needed on this, you can get toxoplasmosis from various sources. For example, by eating raw meat that is infected with it. Or it also could happen if you have, for example, a cat as a pet and you let it go outside your house, and then the cat gets infected outside of your house. When you clean up after your cat, you might have the parasite on your hands, and if you don't clean them well and maybe handle some food or bite your nails, you might get infected. So really, be cautious about this. Keep your cats indoor, be mindful of food safety, avoid raw meats, and ensure you wash your hands well enough. Now, regarding the appearance of zombies, leprosy, which is caused by bacteria, could indeed fit this description. There is a specific type of leprosy that causes a truly zombie-like appearance. Your skin looks rotten and your fingers start to fall off. Some people lose their noses, and there are even cases where they lose their eyes. It's something quite terrible to happen to you. By the way, if you have watched The House of the Dragon, I have a small spoiler for you. This is from the first season. When I created the short version of the video a couple of years ago, a lot of people got mad at me because of this spoiler. Personally, I love spoilers, so I didn't realize that I was giving a spoiler away. In any case, you can move forward in case you haven't watched the series and you want to and don't want it to be spoiled to you. Okay, so the actor portraying King Viserys mentioned that officially, King Viserys has a kind of leprosy as well. And if you look at the latest episodes he appears in, he has lost many things. For instance, his eye and fingers, which could realistically occur from that kind of leprosy bacteria. And if you look at him, he does resemble a zombie. To sum up this part, yes, there are specific viruses, parasites, and bacteria that can turn you into a kind of zombie, but only certain behaviors or looks, not a complete zombie as seen in movies, series, and video games. There has never been, and I don't believe there will ever be, a virus or bacteria that turns you into a complete zombie. Like in these movies where you get infected in seconds, you become violent, and you're running indefinitely for days, months, or even years while decomposing. This I don't think can ever happen. And by the way, just a kind reminder, vaccinate your pets against rabies. We must be responsible pet owners. In summary, zombies, those who lose their lives and then come back to chase you, cannot exist. Zombies created by viruses might exist to some extent, but they wouldn't be like the ones you see in films or games. If you like this video, hit like and subscribe if you want to. It's a free world, I don't control you. And if you also want to donate so we can keep making these videos, it will be greatly welcome. Everything we have here, the recording equipment, the software we use to edit this video, is thanks to our patrons and the people who donate via PayPal. If you also want to become one of those patrons or donors who help us keep making these science videos, we will greatly appreciate it. If you can't, you can still help us by giving a like, leaving any comment, it doesn't matter what you comment, and sharing this video or subscribing to our channel. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Tiny hugs.